Hello again. Welcome back to Insight. We're discussing the impact of International Women's Day. Let's just remind you of our panel. They are Anjali Rao, founder and CEO of Making Her Story, Ugo Arinze, founder of the Onyx Dining Club, Britta Fernandez-Schmidt, the executive director of the charity Women for Women International, and Miran Gidda from the weekly news magazine Newsweek. Welcome back. Now, we were talking about women downing tools and withholding their labour today to make the point that women still need to achieve yet more rights. Britta, you were talking about just how much women can achieve when they don't do any work.
Yeah, exactly. So I was thinking about what happened in Liberia after years of conflict, and women on both sides of the war were just absolutely fed up and upset about the losing another son, and they basically decided to down the tools, and they stopped doing housework, and they stopped looking after children, and they stopped having sex, and they dressed in white, and they sat on the street, and they literally forced the peace to come, and it worked.
And it just shows what women can achieve when they have solidarity.
Absolutely, I think that's exactly right. And what I see in Women for Women International is that with a little bit of the right support, access to knowledge, teaching women about their rights, and access to resources, you can make a huge impact. And we're talking about having access to knowledge. When we teach women about their rights, they in turn teach other women. So from 5%, that increases to 85% of the women that go through the Women for Women International program report teaching other women about their rights. So there's a ripple effect.
What about the really difficult parts of being a woman, the rape, the murder, the domestic violence? I mean, these are all things which have never really been tackled effectively, particularly in war-torn areas where rape is used as a weapon of war. We've had conventions, we've had laws, we've had the UN talking about this, and yet this is something that many women have to face on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the UK, I mean, you're talking about, women of war, but there's a war happening right in our, in our very doorstep in every country of the world. So, for example, in the time it's taken for me just to say that a woman will have called in or been sexually abused and raped, the statistics say that a woman is raped every 3 minutes in the UK alone. And the global statistics are just mind-boggling. And obviously, we have, the statistics around murder, the number of murders that are happening every week. And it's galling that in 2017 that these stories and that these voices and that these crimes aren't being shouted about on our front pages and our media stories every single day until the structures in place deal with this on an active level.
I think you have to have the real meat behind the punishment, because I think that's really where you change behavior, because somebody may not want to do something, but they will do it if they know that there's real ramifications or repercussions to doing it. So actually some of these honor killings in these countries, if people actually went to jail, people actually were persecuted and brought to justice. But also
they are in this country though, aren't they? I mean,
I've just written an article about this. So do you mind if I jump in?
Yeah,
about honor killings that happen overseas? Because what I found with my research is increasingly British women or British residents are taken overseas and murdered there, and it's really, really fascinating, because under British law, if your killer is not a British national and they, as I say, kill you overseas, there's really no legal coverage for you. So there's an interesting case. It's a woman called Sita Kaur. She was a British citizen. Her husband was a British resident. She was taken to India, and her family believes he killed her there.
But isn't the point that we should be changing the attitudes of the communities where these so-called honor killings are being carried out?
Absolutely, and the actual laws that go with this, so that there is no safe haven. You cannot take somebody overseas and commit these acts and these violent. So you need the legislation that goes.
And I mean, there are precedents. If you look at female genital mutilation, for example, because that was a similar case, and now you can prosecute even if you're being taken abroad for that to.
Look, is the problem that we don't have enough women in positions of decision making, in positions of power, in government, in parliament? I mean, there are countries that do very well on this. In fact, Rwanda, Senegal, Bolivia, Zimbabwe, they're all ahead of the UK in terms of female representation. Many countries are way behind them. How do we get women into positions where they can dictate national policy?
Quotas.
Is it about quotas?
Absolutely. I think it absolutely is by quotas. I mean, in my experience over the last 25 years, those countries who have had quotas have seen a significant uprise. It's not the end of it, but it's definitely a very important means. But we also need to support women, to enable them, to give them access to knowledge.
And these countries where there are more women in positions of power are able to guide more budgeting, funding towards education programs and family planning. And I found that that Rwanda managed to pass a law making it legal for women to own land, inherit land, which is astonishing. So clearly, this is what needs to happen going forward, doesn't it?
Well, yes, but it's also about changing the culture as well, because if you look at an issue like rape, yes, it's about having more women and ethnic minorities as judges. It's also about making sure that prosecutors can't say, what were you wearing and where are you drinking? And then it's also just about changing the culture. As I think you kind of mentioned earlier, Shuli, there have been some cases, particularly during war, where rape is legitimized, it's normalized, it's used as a tool. So there's so many different factors. I mean, certainly changing who's in power is one of them, and a big one, but it's not the only one.
And one way of changing the attitudes is, getting to the children. So one of the things we do is we go into primary schools and we talk about the human rights of not just themselves, but the parents and the people that surround their world, and changing the attitudes and breaking down what they're seeing out there on Facebook and Twitter and on films and in pop music videos.
So that's a really interesting point, because in the developing world and the developed world, the image of women, it seems to have changed little over the last few decades, despite us talking about, well, it doesn't matter how you look, it's what you can do and what you can achieve. And yet there are still arguments over how women are objectified or objectify themselves in the media. And that doesn't seem to go away.
It almost becomes, again, your struggle is actually my struggle, right? Because I think, again, along the spectrum, the practical nature of your issues might be different. But the idea of consciousness and awareness is huge, right? And to your point, in more developed societies, we still struggle with, what can women wear and what can they not wear, and their representation. I saw an article yesterday, State Street Capitol or something erected a sculpture at Wall Street opposed to the iconic bull. And it was to bring awareness in light of International Women's Day on the lack of representation of women on corporate boards. So again, if women are doing that, and maybe you say, somebody who's trying to feed their family, they don't care about that issue. But if more women were at the board level, would they be bringing some of those issues along in terms of how we're perceived, our ability to communicate, right? When you speak with an authoritarian tone, it's you're churlish,
we've all had that. You're bossy, you're not
bossy,
authoritative.
and it's just, you have to be
you're aggressive, you're not assertive.
Pet or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that is really at the heart of it, is confidence. And I really agree with you. I think there's so much more that connects us than what divides us. And, as I say, I've just been in Kosovo and in Nigeria, and I see that it is about confidence, and it's about freeing yourself up from the expectations and from the kind of preconceived notions as to how you should behave as a woman. And you can be strong. And if somebody's going to say to you, bossy, well, then so be it. Because does it matter if somebody calls you bossy? It doesn't really, if you are clear about why you're here and what you wanted to achieve. So,
I think the key message that we're getting is that there is a long way to go, but we do have a voice and we do make a difference. Ladies, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Anjali, Ugo, Britta and Miran, thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to leave you now with one of the many videos produced by charities, campaigners and companies to mark International Women's Day. This one is by the UK-based global aid charity Oxfam. I'm Shuli Ghosh and that was Insight.
Women's rights are human rights. Let's unite across boundaries for equality and justice for all.
I'm unstoppable. I'm a pusher with no brakes. I'm invincible. I win every single game. Minds are powerful. I don't need batteries to play. I'm so confident. Yeah, I'm unstoppable today. Unstoppable today. Unstoppable today. Unstoppable today. I'm unstoppable today.